Hey, deserving listeners, love is blind. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. This is the Psychology in Seattle YouTube channel. And I want to remind everyone that since it is a psychology YouTube channel, we might get into some triggering material. So you want to monitor your distress. If you have PTSD or another trauma reactivity, of course, you want to talk with your therapist before you watch stuff like this and, take care of yourself. So do that while we watch.
I think I'm going to leave my shoes here, actually.
Check. I like that idea.
After we got home last night from the party, Jeremy was very cold. He iced me out. He didn't want to talk about anything. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know.
Okay, so we're hearing that after the party that we saw Laura and Jeremy both exhibiting some fairly strong evidence that they have contempt for each other, or at least a reaction of that. Now, they might be totally in love and just had a bad moment, but to be this early in the relationship and to already be showing that amount of disdain for each other, like with Jimmy and Chelsea, they had a major conflict, but they were trying to work it out. The way that Jeremy just walked off, the way that Laura was dismissive about the whole thing, it just shows that in all likelihood they don't really have a connection, or they're just not particularly good with conflict, that kind of thing. Like Jeremy could have given Laura the benefit of that. You think he would if he was in love with her, and just say later, like, hey, that whole bean dip thing, because that was the whole thing, was that he comes over to AD and says, Laura wanted me to bean dip you. And then, there seemed to be, after that whole thing, some tension between the two of them, and there was some words, and then Jeremy's like, yeah, I'm going back to the hotel. I'm leaving early, which is fine. But, if he wanted to, he could have pulled Laura aside and said, hey, I'm not feeling really great about what happened. Can we talk? Or I'm going to take a little break from the party right now. I need to, everything's fine. Just some care there. If they were married for 10 years and he did that, you could imagine that they might understand, well, yeah, he just doesn't like to stick around parties. But this early in a relationship, you just think you would be a little bit more mindful. And then for her, during that whole thing, and then after, if she was really in love or more functional, she would have, in the moment while he was still there, try to work with him. They weren't even really looking at each other from my memory. But anyway, so he goes back, and then she returns, I think a while later. He doesn't even bring it up. She says he's cold and was icing her out. Sounds like maybe now who knows, maybe she tried to ask in a very nice way and he just ignored her or was a jerk. Or she comes home and she's like, I just think you're a baby, because that's what she was saying, childish. I mean, not necessarily about Jeremy, but everyone else. But I think she was lumping Jeremy in with that. And Jeremy tries to talk with her for a second, and then she's more insulting, and then he just shuts down. So we don't know, but this isn't promising. But maybe they're going to talk about it here.
What had happened, and he just had no interest in talking and slept on the sofa, and I slept in the bed, and that was that.
Let's talk about last night.
Well, let me first say this. Last night was triggering for me because...
Okay, so good. They're going to talk about it. They have the same, or theirs looks brushed, and mine is shiny. He introduces it. He's like, hey, let's talk about it. She said, okay, I'll start. I'm triggered. Let's see what she says.
Of past relationships I've been in,
yeah,
where it's I end up being embarrassed by my significant other because of something they do or say or...
Yeah, okay, that's good. So that's a great start. At least we'll see how things go, but that's a great way to start. I've been embarrassed by something that they do, and she's not saying directly, but she's saying, what you did embarrassed me, which is true. We saw two people do this. Is this a Charlotte thing? I'm sure it's not. So she's starting great. She's, hey, I got embarrassed. Then that triggers me. It's go two different ways, generally speaking, on this side of the spectrum. One is to say, and then I was unfair. I got snarky. I resort to this defense of just shutting people out because of this history of mine. And that was great. It wasn't great that you embarrassed me, but I did perhaps react unfairly. The other direction is you triggered this past thing, and therefore it's all your fault. So Let's see how much self-awareness she has. And I don't even know what the right answer to that is, but even if she isn't to blame at all, which I think she is to some extent, I think it's, and I know, given my clinical experience, that here's another tip in conflict, which, happens all the time in spousal relationships, or really any close relationship, that when you believe that you are not to blame and you're heading into a conversation like this, one, assume you probably are to blame, and there's a good chance that you're 50% to blame. Now, for some of you, you blame yourself too much, so that's a whole other issue. But generally speaking, take it from me, when couples fight and they come into my office, if I ask them, okay, how much, honestly, how much is each person to blame? Each person would say the other person is to blame, at least 95%, if not 100%. So that can't be true. One person is wrong, and usually they both are. Usually I'll find that it's a 50-50 thing or a 60-40 thing or something. And so, one, just assume that you're culpable and you just can't see it because we're all self-centered in that way. It's a bias. It's natural. And you have to account for that and not assume that the way things feel or seem to you are objective. The other thing is, even if you're pretty sure that you are only 10% to blame, it can help to even just take responsibility for that 10% so you can start the ball rolling and the other person. It doesn't really matter if each person believes they're only 10% to blame, but each person apologizes, then that's the outcome that matters, right? It's what happened. It doesn't really matter how you see it. And in all likelihood, when things calm down and you're bonded later on, a week later, you'll be able to say, because you bonded and made up, you'll be able to say, I think I wasn't 10%. I think I was 50%. So let's see how both of them do. Because he can absolutely apologize for it. Yeah, I don't know why I outed you that way. I don't understand the bean dip thing. We can talk about that. But in terms of our relationship, yeah, it was bad of me, and here's why. Like, if I was to take a guess, and we'll see how they do, is that there was something going on between the two of them anyway. Tension, maybe even a fight. And she at some point says, you should go over there and bean dip her. And he's just like, what? And she explains that it's a smack on the breast. And he's like, whoa. And so I'm just trying to think, like, what would motivate him to out her? So it's likely a passive aggressive thing, because you can't imagine Jeremy thinking, okay, I'm about to tell everyone that she wanted to do this. You can't imagine Jeremy thinking, this is going to go well for Laura, my fiance. You would imagine that he would know this could be bad, not only for Laura, that people are going to judge her or get upset at her, but Laura's also going to be mad at, so there must have been some aggression there, some hostility, something. And maybe, so I would just take a guess and say that something was going on before that. In terms of what we saw on camera, he would joke all the time and she would roll her eyes and criticize it. But then in the end, she'd say, yeah. So when I even think of that, I think, was there already a problem between, because that joking was also hostile? Or is he just a generally hostile person to everybody? Which, I could imagine, but I don't usually think that because it's not super common.
Whatever. Okay, so in the future, if I tell you a story and I say jokingly, go do something, we have
I didn't do it.
No, I know. So I never in a million years would have thought that you would have repeated any of that to anyone else.
Okay, so she's still claiming that she joked. And, it's possible. It's hard to imagine how that would be a joke. So I'm guessing we're not going to ever find out as to the truth of that. So I'll take her word for it that it's possible that she was legit joking and he just didn't understand or something. But it's just hard to imagine, like, what would the joke be? Ha 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 ha. Go smack AD in the breast. Ha 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 ha. Because the way he was describing it, he was saying, I'm not going to do that. And Laura was doubling down. I don't know. It doesn't seem like, but even then, that's even equally hard to imagine. Why would Laura tell him to even do that? I don't know. Given what we've seen, and it's just the edit, that maybe Laura thought that he is capable of doing that because he's such a jokester and he is kind of erratic, chaotic, that he might just do it. And she actually did think that would be funny. or it would backfire on him because everyone would hate, like Laura. I don't know, this is a stretch, but you can imagine Laura not appreciating his humor thing and wanting validation for that, and which would be natural, and wanting to get everyone to experience his style of humor so that she can go, am I normal for thinking that that's not okay? And then other people are like, oh my God, that's not normal. And she's like, okay, thank you. Like, I don't know. I'm stretched. I don't know. What do you think? Why in the world would any of that happen? The whole scenario. Why would she say that as a joke or not and lie now? We would know why she would lie now, because she knows she's being filmed, or she's trying to redeem herself to him. That's bizarre. And then why would he announce it to everyone?
I look like the biggest asshole in the world. I went to bed angry. I slept on the couch last night. I refused to come back in the room because I was trying to mind my own business. My judgment was like, cool, you made your bed this badly, you might as well lay in it now.
That is interesting. It sounds accurate, sounds authentic, right? You wouldn't lie about that. He's saying he was ashamed. He's like, I made a fool of myself. Well, let's rewind this. This is one of the first times we're hearing any kind of insight or inner world from these two. So I'm sort of absorbing a lot at the same time. So I think he's saying, I overreacted with anger and I left, and then I was just sitting there and I decided I don't deserve to be a part of this relationship or to be with Laura, and so I'm just going to punish myself. That's interesting.
Last night, I refused to come back in the room because I was trying to mind my own business. My judgment was like, cool, you made your bed this badly, you might as well lay in it now. Am I gonna be perfect? No, I'm gonna fuck up. But if I fuck up, I need to handle it a hell of a lot better than I handled it last night.
Okay. I don't know what the lesson is other than just be more thoughtful. If I were Laura, I would say, okay, that's great, thanks. Can you, and they're editing it, but so maybe he already said something, but if I were Laura, I would ask him, well, can you tell me why you decided to out me? What was going on? Were you upset at me for some reason? Do you not understand how that would, particularly since you were adamant to everyone that I wasn't joking, which I'm still not convinced she was joking.
Because you didn't deserve the silent treatment that you got last night. And I know that's not the way to handle shit. And I knew that, and I still did it, and it was wrong, and all I can do is just fix it.
Okay, so on one hand, it's nice that he is taking full responsibility and apologizing. On the other hand, it's a little worrisome because he's not saying why he did it in the first place, like what happens so often, not only on these reality TV shows, but in life, in politics. Public apologies where I take full responsibility and I'm dedicating myself never to do it again. Okay, that's great. It's better than not acknowledging it, but that's not really a true apology. A true apology is, I have spent the time because I care about you to figure out why I did it in the first place so that I can watch out for those factors or correct for those factors in the future so that I'm much less likely or will be completely unlikely to ever do that thing again. Willpower doesn't work, and because if willpower works, then he wouldn't have done it in the first place. That's the key here, is that if it's just a decision to not be a dick, then are we saying that he hadn't realized before last night that he shouldn't decide to be a dick? No, that's not how that works. The question mark I have is, are you two really in love with each other? Because I don't know, but I could imagine a situation where they either weren't sincerely with each other, or upon meeting each other, whatever shred of connection they had dissipated or something, or maybe there was a fight behind the scenes or whatever. Then they go to the party and he hasn't really faced it yet, and he actually just doesn't like Laura, and he has something against her, and so he uses it against her, which is, that's the way it looked, the way it was, right? And then he is, dealing with her disdain afterwards, and he's trying to defend himself. It doesn't really work, and he's like, Like in a normal situation, if they were dating, he'd be like, yeah, the date's over, and they would never talk again. Like he was that done. So he bolts, goes back to the hotel room, and he's like, shit, I can't go home because I want to stay on the show. So what do I do? Kind of made a fool of myself. I told myself I wouldn't do that. I drank too much or something. And then he wakes up the next day. He's like, okay, how do I repair this? Okay, I'll apologize. I'll never do it again. But in his heart, he's done. I mean, that fits, but that's a pretty harsh accusation. I just don't know what I'm seeing. I don't know I don't know. Maybe they'll show us some more affection that can give at least me some confidence that they're legitimately in a relationship.
Good.
I do still like you.
Good.
I mean, at least they're not fist bumping like Kenneth and Brittany were. So that's a plus.
But just so you fully understand like where I'm coming from, in the pods, I like communicated. But in the real world, I would have just been like, no, I probably like I remove myself from situations.
All right, so taking notes because we don't know much about Laura. In conflict, I remove myself from situations. Okay, so that sounds avoidant attachment ish. We don't know, but that's notable, and that's good. It's good that she's saying this, and she's saying it in a non-accusatory way, pretty open way. I think as a warning, and maybe as a I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know what the landscape are they saying, look, this is the way we are. Well, let's watch.
To like protect myself, I guess. You icing me out completely when I had done nothing wrong or to you. I had no choice but to think like something I said or did had.
Yeah, I don't understand this narrative that she didn't do anything. I don't know if it was a transgression upon him, but she was a part of the situation, not only with the bean dip part, but also with afterwards, the way she was talking to him. And, I would just like to see if both people, he is taking full responsibility, but I don't know if he really is. And she is talking more and self-disclosing more than he is, but she's not saying things like, and one, I shouldn't have joked about that, or I should have been more clear that it was a joke. I thought it was pretty clear, but apparently it wasn't. That's on me. And afterwards, the way I was talking to you, I could have done differently. I might have been a little too harsh. I was pulling away in that moment because that's what I will do in the real world. So I should have been more kind. She could think to herself and say, I should have gone to you and held your hand and said, hey, I was joking and you didn't really believe me. And before we had a talk about it, you told everyone. I have a history of people. The other thing, I wonder if she has a history of people embarrassing her. I wonder what's that about? Because the way this embarrassment moment, she is potentially the catalyst. So if you have a complaint that spans multiple partners, even if it's just two, then there's a chance that you are playing a part in it on some level. Now, maybe the other people are legitimately to blame. Like if you were abused by 2 different or 3 different partners, it's not your fault that they abused you, but you are the common denominator on some level. Not to blame for the abuse, but it would help if it is a pattern that you choose abusive people or you tolerate the beginnings of the abusive relationship too long or whatever, that you know that about yourself so that you can not repeat that again, right? And for her, it's a long shot, but given what she's identifying as yet another time where I have a partner that embarrasses me, and if she doesn't recognize, at least in her own mind, that she played at least some part in it, then it casts doubt on those previous incidents where men that she was with had embarrassed her, who also might be to blame just as he is to blame, but that she played a part in it somehow, that she's trying to provoke her partners to do that because she has some relational trauma around that or something.
You off, so then I got pissed off. And so then it just...
You did nothing wrong. Like, that was me.
Yeah.
And I 100% own that.
If we're actually going to get married, then it's like, what happened last...
So he's still in this vein, and it could be accurate that He is 100% to blame. And if that's true, then what the hell, Jeremy? I mean, but he's not saying much. So I don't know if this is sincere. But okay, let's go with it. They both agree he's 100% to blame. I wasn't there. So we're supposed to believe that she was obviously making a joke about asking him to bean dip AD, and he just up and walked over and outed her and like refused to give in on the idea that she was joking. And then they had some bit of a tiff about that, and then he left. So he's saying, I'm to blame for that whole thing. She was joking, but he's not saying that. He's not saying, yeah, I said you weren't joking, but looking back, you were. He's not saying that. He's just saying, I'm 100% to blame. It's all my fault. That's it. I don't know. It's just, something's weird.
Last night is not it.
No, absolutely.
In a perfect world, he's going to disclose more about where his heart is, where he was coming from, the factors that led up to whatever it was that led to him doing the 100% wrong that he is claiming. That's what I'm hoping for. What I'm expecting is going to happen is that there's going to be a lot of pontification, a lot of Hallmark card kind of statements that don't really inspire a lot of confidence in me as a viewer about their relationship. So let's watch.
Not to be dramatic, but if someone had been like, are you guys getting married? I think maybe yesterday I would have said 100%, and today I would maybe say, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why I got so worried last night and this morning. Because I was like, well, I'm on my own. I'm on my own.
And that's understandable, but his reaction, the way she's delivering it, it just doesn't have the weight that you would expect if they were legit in love. I hate when people, hate is a strong word. I'm not a fan of when everyone assumes that everyone's lying and deceiving and just trying to be on the show. We know what happens sometimes. One couple was kicked off the show last season for, at least the producers thought they were doing that, or maybe it was more than one. I think it was two. Anyway, or was it 2 seasons ago? I think it happens multiple times, but that does happen, and it could be happening now. But I'm trying to get my head around how, because just imagine like with AD and Clay, at this point anyway, if one of them were just to drop that, like, yeah, I don't know if we're going to get married, I just think it would have more weight to it, the delivery, the reception of something like that. She just drops that out there, and he's just like, yeah. And maybe he's having a lot of feelings. He's a candidate for someone that is really cut off from his emotions. Hearing that he was super angry last night, and now he's ashamed of himself, and he's real short, something's going on with him in particular, I think.
That's why I got so worried last night and this morning. Because I was like, well, I'm on my own. I'm on my own.
You're not on your own.
Which is a scary place to be in,
You're not on your own.
Okay. So then she says things that are relatable. She's like, whoa, yesterday I thought we were 100%. Now I'm like, I don't know. And I feel alone. So there's something to grab onto there, right? You're like, okay. And then all he has to say, he doesn't have any reaction like, oh my God, or something. He's just kind of blank, very confidently. You're not on your own. You're not on your own. That's all he says, meaning I'm with you. That's okay. I mean, they fell in love in the pods, so maybe she likes this kind of communication style. If I were her, I would want a lot more. What's going on with you? Where do you stand? Why did you do that? How do you feel about it? Is this a thing that you do? Just what's going on?
Not just looks-wise.
Okay, but that's not enough.
No, like not just looks-wise, but like the things you do, the mannerisms, the way you act, like the way we communicate. And I literally went back to the pods and was like, we get along on every level. There's a reason we're here.
Okay. It's good. He's disclosing, and I'm starting to relate. And at least anecdotally, when we hear this phrase that they use, it's like I'm returning. I'm trying to get back to the pods. I'm trying to think if we had any couple that succeeded with this experiment that would say that during this phase, at least in the edit. Like with Well, now I'm questioning all the relationships. Well, we haven't seen Amy and Johnny yet in episode 7. I am now thinking there's a chance none of them are going to make it to the end. Maybe Amy and Johnny. Like with Brett and Tiffany from the Seattle season, was there ever a point where they had to say to themselves and disclose, I'm trying to get back to the pods? At least I don't remember that happening. Did maybe Chelsea and Kwame had moments like that? I don't know. I don't know why I'm so concerned. I should just watch because it'll all pan out. But I get worried. It also is kind of hard for me. I'll just say that for me personally, it's hard to watch a scene that is based on the premise that they are at least in it to win it. It's hard for me to watch a scene where that's what I'm supposed to believe, but it's hard to believe it. It's hard. I feel disjointed, right?
That go away over my dumbass ego last night, and like, I don't like that it happened, and I'm sorry.
Okay.
Because I do love you,
I love you too.
and I want things to work out.
I feel better.
Feel better?
Yeah. Communication, I said it in the...
I don't know. Maybe, and I'll get off of this, but maybe for the two of them, they just have this way of communicating, and it's just not very relatable to me, the way that he says things. What I'll say on the overall surface is things are going very, very well. A lot of good communication, eye contact, taking responsibility, lack of hostility.
Communication is everything. Where do you think we stack up with the other couples now that you've met everybody?
I think we're one of the top couples.
We're one of the top.
It's funny, almost everyone says that. And it almost always seems, what? Which I guess is a good sign, because what it says is they think that they have a strong connection. So if they are a yes, at least at this point for me, wow. Are they? You know. Are they? Don't tell me. Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it in the comments. Don't spoil it in the comments. Otherwise, I can't read the comments.
Who do you think is above us?
Nobody.
Nobody?
Nobody.
We're number one.
We communicate the best.
Let's come together.
Last night was a bad example.
But I'll say what I said at the beginning. I'm not inspired that it's never going to happen again or something like it won't happen again, because there isn't any exploration or demonstrated exploration by him as to what led up to what he did. Maybe he's done it, but it's like one of those public apologies where I take full responsibility and I apologize and I'll never do it again. If you ever hear your partner saying something like that in a fight, or if you find yourself saying that, you want to really look at that, because in a relationship, you might not do that exact thing again, but you will very likely do something like it again. So don't say you're never going to do it again. Now, you don't want to say to your partner, I'm going to do it again, you're just going to deal with it. But be realistic, because if you're not, you might not pay attention well enough or heal enough or go to therapy enough, and then you'll do it again and it'll be worse or something, Like, use this as a jumping off point, particularly for you couples. Think about what you have done recently as a transgression to your partner, maybe a moderate one, as moderate to severe one, something significant. And think about the themes or the category or the type, and then think about all the times that you did something along those lines to your partner. For many of you, you know exactly. You're in therapy or you have enough self-awareness. I know, I have a tendency not to listen to my partner. I have a tendency to not give my partner the benefit of the doubt or whatever. And when you recognize that, then of course you know that you've tried not to do it again, and you've been working on it this whole time, so you're probably going to do it again. The key, though, is that you're trying, and you're demonstrating you're trying reasonably enough, and you're telling your partner you're trying, and it's overall the trend is getting better. In particular, your apology is getting quicker, and your acknowledgement is getting quicker, which I would say is all you can really expect from your partner. Not that they're never going to do it again, but that they can recover faster. They do it, and then I'll just say for me, one of the things that I notice that I do with my wife, and really everybody, is, there's this conversation going on, it's just kind of normal, and then I say something, and it comes out harsh, or it comes out not the way I intended it, And up until, I don't know, 10 years ago, I would just try to make up for it, right? Like I'd say something at work or with my wife or something, and I would hear myself, or I'd see the reaction of other people, and I'd go like, oh, that must have come out wrong. And in the past, I would just sort of power through it, hoping I could make up for it or just act like it didn't happen. But more recently, what I'm trying to do is very quickly say, sorry, that even if it's a minute later, to force myself to say, by the way, what I said earlier, that came out harsher than I meant it. I just kind of flubbed the delivery. So the reason why I want to do that is because it's fair, but also it's self-serving for me to do that because I don't want people to have the wrong impression of what I'm saying and distance themselves from me or have the wrong idea of me. But it requires humility. It requires action. It requires biting the bullet, so to speak. And I'm used to just trying to sweep it under the rug. So in the future, am I going to have the wrong tone or come across in a way that I didn't mean and see the results or suspect that I just did that? Yeah, that's not the point. The point isn't I'm never going to do it again. The point is, okay, how am I going to recover? So the ideal is that when I do it at the most ideal space is that when I do that again, the very next thing I say, which I have done before, is that came out wrong. Like halfway through this thing, I was like, no, that came out wrong. That's the ideal. The ideal is not, I suppose the ideal is that I don't do that, but that's unreasonable. The ideal is that I recover and apologize and acknowledge as soon as I possibly can. All right, well, that does it for that episode. I want to remind everyone that if I heart your comment, it doesn't mean that I'm in love with you or something, or that it's because a red heart is romantic to me. Valentine's Day. So it doesn't give me another option. So by hearting it, I'm saying I hear you. It doesn't even necessarily mean I agree. It usually does mean I agree, but it doesn't necessarily even mean that. It's just like, hey, I heard you, and I get it. And I wish there was I wish there were more than one button for us. Like I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I see where you're coming from, and then maybe I didn't know that, or hey, because sometimes it takes a lot longer to say that in a sentence, and I think they'd get more engagement all around if they had those kind of, so why don't they? Well, anyway. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.